It was an ordinary afternoon when everything changed for me. I had been living a quiet, simple life with my family, never expecting my peaceful world to be turned upside down. I had been engaged to Dylan for 6 months, and despite the occasional awkward moments with his mother, I thought everything was fine. But I was wrong. The truth was about to be revealed, and it wasn't pretty. Dylan's mother, Karen, had always seemed a bit too eager for her son's marriage. At first, I assumed it was just normal motherly affection, but over time I began to feel something was off. She would often make strange comments about my family, about my job, and about my appearance. It was subtle at first, small, dismissive remarks that made me uncomfortable. But I brushed them off. After all, I had nothing to hide. Then, one day, everything came to light. My father, Tony, had been a well-known actor for years. He was famous for his roles in several popular dramas, and his reputation was spotless. But what I didn't know was that Karen had been obsessed with him. She had been a fan of my father for years, but I never imagined her admiration could go so far. It wasn't until the day I invited her over to meet my father that I saw her true colors. The moment she laid eyes on my father, everything changed. The warmth in her voice disappeared, replaced by a strange, cold calculation. She suddenly became excessively polite, almost desperate. It was as if she was trying to make up for all the rude things she had said about me and my family in the past. I could see the way her eyes flickered nervously, trying to impress him. It was then that I realized she had been harboring a hidden agenda all along. She didn't care about me or Dylan's happiness. She cared about securing her place in my father's world. My father noticed her behavior too, and I could tell he was uncomfortable. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by a look of restrained irritation. And then, Dylan spoke up. He was quiet during the whole interaction, but as soon as he saw his mother struggling, he leaned in and tried to reassure her. But I wasn't having it. I had had enough. With a deep breath, I stood up and made my decision clear. "This ends here," I said, looking directly at Karen. "I am ending my engagement with Dylan. I won't become part of your family." The words felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. It was a decision I had been putting off for too long. Karen's face turned pale, and she immediately started begging me to reconsider. "Ashley, please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean it. If I had known it was your father, I would have acted differently. I promise. We can still be a family. Please don't throw this away." But I couldn't trust her words anymore. Her behavior had been manipulative, and it was clear she only wanted to tie herself to my father's wealth and status. I wasn't going to let her use me any longer. I looked at her with cold determination. "No," I replied, my voice firm. "I've heard enough. I don't need your false promises. I refuse to be part of your family." Dylan, who had been standing silently by, now looked at me in disbelief. "What did you say?" he asked, almost as if he couldn't process what I had just done. But he wasn't the one I was concerned about. It was Karen's desperate reaction that made me feel disgusted. She tried to appeal to my father now, her eyes filled with tears. "Tony," she began, "you want the best for your daughter, don't you? We have assets. We can provide for her. Please, reconsider. Think about the future." My father didn't even blink. "Ashley values love more than money," he said calmly. "Don't worry about us. We're well off, and we don't need your wealth. We're not interested in a marriage based solely on that." It was then that I realized how toxic this whole situation had become. Dylan had never loved me. His interest in me had always been shallow, and it was clear that his mother had pushed him into this engagement, not because of any affection, but because of the potential benefits it would bring her. Karen fell silent, likely trying to think of a new tactic. My father's words had struck a chord with her. She probably hadn't expected us to stand our ground. Then, something unexpected happened. Dylan, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly burst into laughter. It wasn't a kind laugh, but one filled with mockery. "You think you can just throw me away like this? You'll regret this decision, Ashley. An ordinary woman like you won't find anyone else who'll marry you." The words stung, but they also made everything clear. Dylan had never cared for me. He had wanted a woman who would simply fit into his life, obedient and unquestioning. someone he could control. But I wasn't that person. His mother, still desperate, tried to intervene. "Dylan, stop. This is too much." But he didn't listen. Instead, he continued, "I chose someone like you because you were easy. I planned to have fun with other women after marriage, but now you're making this so difficult." His arrogance was staggering. He had no regard for my feelings, and at that moment, I knew I couldn't go back. I looked at my father, who was clearly seething with anger. "Dad, just wait," I said, calming him down before he did something he might regret. I took a deep breath, my heart racing, but I had to finish this. I reached up and removed my sunglasses, the ones my father had given me. Dylan's eyes widened in shock. He had never seen me without them, and he had never seen me fully made up. Normally, I wore minimal makeup, just foundation, but today I had put on eyeshadow, mascara, and eyeliner. It was a transformation. Dylan stared at me, his face turning a deep shade of red. "Is this the real you?" he asked, his voice faltering. "Yes," I replied, my voice calm. "This is me. I used to downplay my appearance because I didn't want to stand out, but I'm done hiding. You don't get to criticize me or my family anymore." Dylan looked flustered, his words stammering as he tried to recover. "If you had looked like this from the beginning, I would have treated you better," he said, almost pleading. "We can still fix this. Cancel the engagement cancellation. Let's work this out." I shook my head. "It's too late for that. The engagement is over. And by the way, I've already canceled the wedding venue reservation. You'll have to pay the cancellation fees." Dylan's face fell, and for a moment, he seemed speechless. But I wasn't done. "And you should be the one to pay for the cancellation fees. After all, this mess is your fault." Karen tried to intervene again, but Dylan was too shocked to respond. My father, ever the strategist, chimed in with a suggestion. "Shouldn't Dylan's father be the one to cover the fees? He owns luxury cars and can afford it easily." The mention of Dylan's father struck a nerve. His father was a wealthy businessman, and the connection between my father and him was well known. My father had appeared in advertisements for his company in the past. Dylan's mother was silent now, likely realizing the gravity of the situation. Dylan collapsed into a chair, his face pale. "I can't handle this," he muttered, his voice shaking. I turned to my father. "Let's go home, Dad. This is over." As we left the room, I could see Dylan and his mother sitting in stunned silence. But this wasn't the end of the story. Dylan's father, furious at the situation, demanded that Dylan pay the full cancellation fees. The fallout from this incident was immense, and it didn't stop there. Dylan's father, a powerful man, later exposed his wife's infidelity. She had written a passionate love letter to my father, confessing that her husband was just a source of money. This led to a public divorce and the end of her relationship with Dylan's father. She was even expelled from my father's fan club, where she had once been an obsessive member. The whole family was falling apart, and Dylan, now financially burdened, was facing a future he never expected. His obsession with me grew, but I had moved on. I had no intention of ever returning to someone like him. A few months later, Dylan was arrested for stalking me. He had shown up at my home uninvited, trying to force his way back into my life. He called me relentlessly, begging for forgiveness, but I refused to answer. Finally, after a particularly aggressive encounter, I filed a police report. Dylan's obsession had become dangerous. As it turned out, Dylan lost his job and was left with significant debt. His life had unraveled, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. It was as if the universe had corrected the wrongs he had inflicted on me. Now, my life was different. I had taken on a new role, my father's manager. It was challenging but fulfilling. I was no longer a passive part of someone else's world. I had reclaimed my identity, my strength, and my future.